South China Morning Post, 3 April 2023, Western anti-China hawks triumph, but Chinese paid doves risk ruin. Many, if not most, legislators worldwide, and possibly the West, have made anti-China their default attitude in recent years. I don't even think about whether Beijing requested it. However, joining the hawkish bandwagon has two direct repercussions for backbenchers. The China hawks will have a simple meal ticket, which on the one hand, encourages them to compete with one another. Exaggerations and even incorrect statements about the China threat might readily result from this. Conversely, individuals seen as being friendly with China or soft on it expose themselves to attacks, which can be nasty and hurtful. Two recent events, one in Canada and the other in Britain, provide insights into these changes. Han Dong, a former Liberal lawmaker, has served Global News in Canada with a notice of libel in response to reports that he was a witting member of a Beijing-backed foreign influence network there. Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, who was accused of spying but were more likely held as bargaining chips to secure the release of Huawei's number 2 Meng Wanzhou, who was then detained in Vancouver, were accused of spying, according to a particularly incendiary claim made by Global News. Dong allegedly advised Han Tao, China's consul general in Toronto, that Beijing should delay their release. Legal action will be required to determine if the news article constitutes libel. But at the very least, I believe it's fair to say that its contents are significantly less than what first appears to be the case and that its senior editors would not have even bothered to read it if Canada were not currently experiencing widespread public outrage over China's influence operations there. More on this is discussed below. Alicia Kearns, a British Tory MP, revealed to GB News that panic buttons were installed in each room of her home because she was concerned that hostile states like China may try to harm her. Even though she has repeated it since last week on different British news sites, I have my doubts. As the head of the critical Foreign Affairs Select Committee in Parliament, Kearns is undoubtedly no small fry. But do the Chinese Communists have specific plans for her and her family? Without question, China has a negative opinion of Kearns. She, along with members of the All-Party Parliamentary Group and the China Research Group, which is made up of hardline conservative MPs, has effectively transformed their anti-China stance into the consensus view across the political spectrum in the British Parliament thanks to their positions on the committee. However, many others are considerably higher up the totem pole and would be more advantageously targeted if China intended to kill or otherwise physically injure British political figures. Her assertion makes no sense, as was stated to GB News and reiterated by others. She said placing panic buttons throughout her home was not her idea, instead, she just took the security professionals' recommendations. She was cited as stating, "I was given that advice, and, of course, you take the advice given to you by security experts." Why was the advice provided to her? "There are MPs whose kids are driven by the police to school every morning," she said. Some colleagues have balaclava-clad individuals outside their workplaces and are informed they require police security at all times in their districts. "I was told that I required panic alarms in each room of my home due to the threats I have received, including threats against my 2 young children, under 4 years old, and foreign states' interest in trying to harm and undermine me." Now, if you take out the last clause of the previous sentence, all of those threats, stalkers, people in balaclavas, and threats against my children, were domestic. It is good knowledge that police and security agencies have increased the threat levels and protection for MPs ever since Tory MP David Amos was fatally stabbed in his district in October 2021. Ali Harbi Ali, a 25-year-old Muslim British man who supported the Islamic State and attacked Amos, was later found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. There have been more reports of harassment and violence against MPs from Chinese and Islamists since the beginning of Britain's spiralling cost of living issue a year ago. Beijing probably has Kearns on its radar. However, it appears more likely that she is purposefully misrepresenting a domestic concern as a China threat to support the hawkish narrative she has been promoting toward Beijing. Let's go back to the Han Dong case for a moment. Global News title for the article read, Liberal MP Han Dong secretly advised Chinese diplomat in 2021 to delay freeing two Michaels, sources, citing anonymous sources from the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS, the nation's equivalent of the American CIA. By 2021, the controversy over Meng's extradition to the US and the two Michaels arrests by China had escalated to a massive international issue involving the highest levels of government in all three nations. Their opinions, in any case, were immaterial. If Dong had spoken with the Chinese ambassador to Canada, to whom he didn't have the same access, the situation might have been different. Although the headline's meaning seemed plain, the story's claims were difficult to understand due to discrepancies and inconsistencies. On one side, it was asserted that Dong allegedly suggested to the MSS spy Hua Tao that if Beijing released the two Michaels, whom China accused of espionage, the opposition conservatives would benefit. The piece, however, asserted that Dong also allegedly requested that Beijing demonstrate some progress in the Kovrig and Spavor cases. The two people added. This would benefit the government's Liberal Party, which came under fire for China's cruel treatment of Kovrig and Spavor. Also, utilizing prisoner diplomacy. The entire narrative omitted any explanation as to why the Justin Trudeau-led Liberal government would gain more from securing the early release of the two Michaels than it would from advancements in their treatment and a delay in that release. We also know that those unnamed cheese sources approached media outlets other than Global News, which was the only one to publish the story and was not concerned with Chinese retaliation, according to later reporting from the Globe and Mail, Canada's national newspaper. The cheese never bothered to provide the transcript of the phone call between Dong and Han until the matter went public and after Dong provided the Prime Minister's office with his account of the events, according to a formal statement from the office. The event, which at best was a typical storm in a teacup and only seriously affected Dong and his family's lives, reputation, and career, was picked up by Global News. This raised more doubts about the allegiance of the greater Chinese community.